I guess if anything, let's get started. By no means am I trying to stand up here and say, hey, let's work through this, but it's also an open discussion of kind of where do you guys want to start with this? Truly, because there's a lot of things wrapped around it. I have nothing to present. We're just up here winging it. One of the big things nowadays is, ironically, for whatever reason, people are still moving off Windows 10. A lot. Yeah. You have 65 days now? Something like that. So, one of the things that people don't understand, especially in legacy architecture, is MDT is no longer supported in Windows 11. So good luck. Best effort.
Still works.
It works, except for 24H2, which does not allow you to run VBS scripts on it. So therefore, MDT doesn't work.
Isn't MDT going away?
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Where's Dave? We got to ask him that.
Yeah. He's building his brand.
You mean building his brandy?
Yes. Yes. Building his brandy. So, leading into that discussion, what are the other options for automating your image build process? Wrapped into that. No, I don't have a presentation. Oh, are we supposed to be recording?
Yeah, we're supposed to be attempting
I am
it.
recording, but yeah.
We're supposed to be attempting it.
Okay.
You keep going.
So, what is everybody using or attempting to use for automation practices for building a master image?
I'm still on LTSC, so I'm riding that till 27. Maybe I'll retire by then.
Junior admin?
Yeah, that works. That works.
Packer and chocolatey.
You can't go wrong with that. You and I have had many discussions
Yes,
wrapped
we
around. So, for those of you that don't know what Packer.io or chocolatey is, Packer.io is a JSON formatted MDT-like solution. It does not have the fancy GUI, so it's all JSON files, but it works freaking amazing.
And it's OS agnostic.
Yes.
And platform agnostic.
100%. Chocolatey is basically the same thing for applications. It downloads from a WinGet-like repository, downloads the applications, installs them on VM so you can call one or the other as you're running through the processes. Yeah.
So we'll start this up. So Sean, you brought up Packer. In previous versions of this in Arizona, like Owen would present about Packer and his challenges on that. That's obviously been 18 months ago-ish. Where are you finding the flaws? I know he would complain about the VMware double reboots and all that other stuff. Like in kind of, yeah. And I feel like there was a big push 2 years ago about people posting, hey, Packer templates or HCL. Ashley's not going to like you saying Jason. But like that kind of learning curve, because I don't feel like I've seen a lot, but I don't know if it's just back to that build your brand, like the blogging side kind of gotten a little.
Well, I mean, besides the death of tech blogging,
right?
Unless you want to subscribe to my Substack, which I haven't set up yet. So, like in terms of issues with Packer.
Yeah, hop up here.
The biggest issues I've had were not necessarily with Packer itself, but it was more around either the underlying platform integration or like Windows or like Linux, right? It's like just trying to work around like those little, little things. Like, is my auto on a 10.xml file set up correctly to format my disk and install Windows correctly? And am I getting, the right run once commands in there from the right disk? those are the kinds of issues I've had with it, but not necessarily with Packer itself, right? Like, you have to kind of think about, like, to be honest, it is a lot of trial and error to get it. Once you get it working right, you don't touch it, because like you have to like kind of go through, do trial and error, see where it breaks, research where the process breaks, and then kind of move on. The biggest challenges I've had lately. So I've been moving my lab to Nutanix, a Nutanix Community Edition. There is a really good Nutanix plugin, but like there were things that didn't have that vSphere had, like the ability to send keystrokes to the hypervisor. Like, so like when I was building Debian images, I had a process that I stole from one of my coworkers that we used in our lab that I based mine on, that sent all the keystrokes to boot from the ISO and, you know, pull down my, not the Kickstart file, but, you know, all that stuff. That broke, so I had to go to the Debian cloud images. Well, those require a serial port. That required a pull request to the Nutanix plugin to, you know, add that support in. So things like that. It depends on who's writing it, who's maintaining the plugin. With Windows, the biggest issue with Windows 11 has been Windows updates, right? Because between Dave Segura no longer supporting his OSD deploy tool and Microsoft breaking how updates would apply to that, and the Windows Update plugin being kind of finicky with the order updates get installed in, it's like little things like that.
Yeah, so I had a question about that. So we all remember like slipstreaming the offline installers into Windows XP back in the day. You could just, you know, literally put them all on a burnt CD and just have it call directly from the disk, build your image. Machine never had to go out to the internet.
Yep.
What about like zero trust or secure networks that they're building the desktop specifically because they don't want anything touching the internet? So how would you get around that and get the full offline installers and do that slipstream method, but also with tools that are easy for the customer to use after you leave, and something that's more of a vendor blessed, not some kind of witchcraft thing that we're putting in there?
You're asking for the impossible.
Yes.
Right? It's kind of like, do you want it good, fast, or cheap? Pick two.
Right.
Slipstreaming is still there, right? Like the one thing I still use the OSD deploy tool for is slipstreaming my hypervisor network drivers and storage drivers into the Windows ISO. That's like the only thing I use it for, because it makes it easy, right? That tool probably won't be supported or maintained much longer because he's already not supporting and maintaining it, and I don't blame him because his job has moved away from that. So, like, you can get the AHV drivers from the Nutanix site. You can still expand the VMware Tools installer to grab those drivers. Other hypervisors make them available as well. The clouds make them available. Can't leave. You're the expert.
It's not allowed.
You didn't say Ansible quick enough.
Yeah. Ansible. So like that's still there. The nice thing I like about Chocolatey, so getting to the second part of that, as where I think you're going, is like Chocolatey, you can host a repo, your own repo. You can package your apps up yourself from your own trusted installers. You don't have to go out to the internet, and you just tell Chocolatey, go get the packages from here. And then, you know, that's why I use it. It's also because I don't want to have to maintain SCCM or Intune.
Yeah.
So for a home lab.
And you know, you don't want to have to tell a customer we have to use WSUS and that server needs to be internet facing when the whole MO is to keep everything secure.
Yeah.
And you know, as they would say, the kids today, it is sus.
Yeah. And to that same point, you can also run WinGet and run local WinGet repositories as an option also to install applications, deploy them.
So are we talking primarily image creation for VDI or image creation for physical machines?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Oh, go ahead.
No, go.
I was going to say, you won't use Packer for physical machines, obviously. MDT, as long as it lives, will still be good for that. But I think with the way Microsoft's going with like auto enroll and, pushing down things using whatever the vendor
Intune,
supplied
yeah.
images, Intune or other management tools like Workspace ONE or whatever. But for like virtual server images, for updating your cloud images, for VDI images, like all these tools are great.
Yeah. The nice thing that Microsoft started doing a couple of years ago is updating media every month. So you can actually download a patched version of Windows all the
Yep.
time as your starting point. Then you don't worry about updates. You just download a new ISO every month. I think they also even publish VHDs to Azure,
They
which
do.
you can download as a starting point, so that works out reasonably well.
Yep.
For physical machines, most people have just started using the install.wims directly off of the Microsoft Media and not even creating their own image, so the demand seems to be going away on that side. VDI, not so much, because you want a pre-configured OS that's just ready to go. But on the clients, on the devices, it's not quite as urgent.
Well, and I think one of the things Microsoft did really well in that regards is they now require all the hardware on the machine to work out of the box with the Windows installer, right? So you don't have to get a lot of custom drivers for at least like network and storage. Those should all be baked in. And if you're using VMware, for the short period of time, and we'll talk about that in the next session. The VMXNet 3 and the VMware PV SCSI driver are baked into Windows now too. So you don't have to, slipstream those drivers in. But when we start looking at other hypervisors and other alternatives and other clouds, right? Anything KVM based, you don't have those drivers as far as I know. They're not in there yet. And then depending on which version of KVM you're using, Nutanix may tweak it in some way that, HP isn't, and so forth, or Proxmox isn't. So show of hands, who's already automating their VDI builds or their server builds? All right, let me rephrase that. Who here's a customer who's doing that? Okay. And who here is a consultant or a professional services person who's at least recommending that their customers do it?
Every day.
Good.
So who's using MDT still?
A lot of people.
It's still what I'm using in my lab. My
Yeah.
work environment, because we already had a config manager environment, I just piggyback off of that. Largely for the same thing. It's like, there's somebody else building a bunch of application packages. I don't want to redo that work.
Yeah. I
Yes,
mean,
the flip side of everything we're talking about is the sealing process of that image, right? So as a consultant, we got this pristine image and we need to leave it with the customer. Of course, there's gonna be months of updates, and we have to leave that behind with them. What's the best way that you guys have found for them to maintain that image to where it's good, it's solid?
don't let them touch it.
So I think this is where the automation really comes
Yeah.
into play, right? Like, instead of leaving the customer with an image, you leave them with a process or a tool, right? Like, what I like to do and what I've recommended to some of the cloud provider partners I used to work with when I was at VMware was take Packer, build this, use this to build your generic images that go into your catalog, right? Because they can't make things that are specific to one customer, but like automate this process and then run it weekly. And then you get a fresh image in your catalog every week that's up to date. And if there's driver updates or if there's out of band Microsoft updates, you can pull those in. That's what I've recommended. Now, none of those, at least as far as I know, none of those cloud providers ever followed up with me on that. And these aren't like AWS and Google. These are like the small scale, like they were VMware cloud provider partners, so they were kind of more boutique clouds. some I think they started working on it, but I have no idea if they ever actually finished it.
Yeah.
Chris?
Following that same line, yes, giving them a concrete process to do it, unfortunately, is, there's still a lot of people afraid of automation as much as we try to push for it. But yeah, giving them a dedicated process and then ensuring and instilling in them not to install anything that's bloatware. So, app rationalization is a big thing. And then as we're growing into the modern world, everything auto updates. So no matter what you install, go figure out how to disable the auto update.
Yeah, you need to maintain that. Now, it also depends on the size of your customer, right? If you're working with a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises, it's a smaller IT team. They may not have a dedicated application packaging team or application packaging person. They may not be running config manager, right? That's a different story from a process and maintainability standpoint than going into some of these larger enterprises that have dedicated people or dedicated teams for these. In that second case, like Chris said, they have that auto update stuff figured out. They have the applications package. They probably have the tools to deploy it already, and you're just bringing those tools into whatever process you want to use for image building. Whereas the smaller companies, smaller teams, even like MSPs, they may not have that knowledge or that muscle to do this, and then it becomes a lot harder because they may have Intune for their physical machines, but you're probably not going to use Intune to manage your golden image. So now you have to figure out, how am I going to get those packaged apps out of there into something else? Who's going to maintain that? Those become bigger questions.
Right.
As someone who's fairly new to this whole automation space as well, and I've been looking at various methods of going about this, do you have recommendations in terms of a platform, I presume like a jump server that's running these scripts, Packer scripts, PowerShell scripts, so forth, DevOps an option, pipelines, that kind of stuff? Is there a recommendation or maybe a standard that is fail-safe?
It depends.
There's no fail-safe option.
There's no fail-safe.
Yeah, right.
IT's a Rube Goldberg device.
Yeah.
Has to work right every time, except for the one time the golf ball goes off and crashes the whole course.
So, are you a consultant or do you work for a customer?
Consultant. So yeah, I'm looking at the Azure DevOps, and that's been the direction we've been sort of directed through.
Okay.
So there's been, it's I've gotten to the point where it's working, but it's what other alternatives are there?
So, any sort of automation tool, it could be some organizations, they may have a task scheduler that they use for, batch processing, right? You could look at using something like that to kick off your workflow, or, whatever CI/CD tool they have. I built out Jenkins in my lab because that seemed easiest at the time, and it now sticks there. But it also could do what I wanted with PowerShell, running PowerShell scripts natively. So you kind of have to work. What I would recommend is when you talk with your customers about this, find out what they're doing. If they're doing something, try to piggyback off that, bring those teams in, because they're also going to have the expertise to know how to do different things, or the people to focus on that. If they have nothing, Azure DevOps is probably a pretty good place to start if they're an Azure shop. If they're not, whatever, you can,
There's too many options out there.
Yeah.
I started mine running cron jobs. I was a glutton for punishment, ran a product called Visual Cron. Hey, we got to run Linux stuff on Windows because it works better. So, like I said, glutton for punishment. But that's the tools that we had to begin with, and eventually migrated to Jenkins. Did some stuff with Power Automate for Azure and Azure DevOps. So it just depends on what fits.
Yeah.
And as you grow and expand, you have to adapt to it.
Right.
So
Yeah. And the other thing is, like he was pointing out, if customer is using said tool for said thing and they're familiar with it, it's probably best to integrate with that tool. You know, like Sean was saying about Intune. Yes, you can deploy Intune images to physical machines. Yes, you can deploy Intune to VDI master images. Caveat to that is removing it before you publish it.
Yeah.
But you know, but the uncertainty, you have to test and figure out what other stuff is tattooed in there that may cause a problem with the VDI land. But it's working through those challenges and trying to use the tools that you have in your organization instead of trying to find something new and be a one-man IT shop because you're the only person that knows that tool.
Yeah, it often really comes down to a business decision has been made. Hey, we're going to the cloud, we're going to Azure. Where somebody has decided because they like the licensing model or whatever, and then that team has been maybe building golden images for their existing environment for years, and now they have to figure out a new platform and a new way to do that. So usually what I'm doing when I come in as a consultant on any of these organizations is saying, okay, let me learn what you're doing today, because then what I can do is help you connect the dots for the way that most closely works to the modern platform that you're trying to move to. Because as much as we may like this or that technical solution, if the business comes down and says, hey, we're moving to this thing, then that team is scrambling because they have legacy knowledge for how this works in their existing environment, and they're just trying to figure out how to make it work. So when you say, okay, we're going to build golden images in Azure now, well, here's the different tools that we have that can do this, but mostly it's just going to be about connecting dots. And then as you're going through that, there's a really small window of opportunity to say, and here's the more modern ways that you can deploy applications in an environment like this. Maybe that's using the Azure Image Builder built on Packer. Maybe it's leveraging Airbio's automation to say, hey, we want to get apps into the golden image this way, or we want to deploy them at this stage. Really, with the golden image, you're just trying to figure out if I can stage as much as possible on the front end for virtual desktop stuff, then when I need to roll this out and deploy it, it's taking less time, because sure, you can stage a bunch of application deployments to a virtual desktop environment after they're deployed, but then there's time between when you say, okay, we need to get this new patch version of Windows out because there's a vulnerability going around, and then everything else tied in with that. So where do you want to save the time? If it's still golden image packaging and things like that, then you can still absolutely do that with a bunch of different tools on Azure. But it's really going to be for that team, helping them learn and connect the dots, because you're going to go away at some point and they're going to have a process they can follow that isn't going to leave them in the lurch. And that's one of the bigger challenges is they move to a new platform.
And that brings up another great point is, whatever tool or platform you're picking across is around what the goal that you're trying to reach, whether you're deploying on-prem or in Azure or Nerdio or wherever across the board, is where you're trying to deploy it, or if you're trying to deploy it across all of them. Maybe using Nerdio's image management is not the greatest solution for deploying on-prem, where you can use something else to automate across all the board. So it's working through a lot of those challenges also on top of that.
Now, one thing to keep in mind too with this is, especially if you're on the consulting side, you also have a sales pipeline. And you need to be able to sell that outcome regardless of the tool. And in that case, picking a tool you're comfortable with, like Azure DevOps, if that's where your organization is headed, is still good, because then you're not necessarily selling Azure DevOps at that point. You're selling the process and the outcome, right? And you can say, well, yeah, we built this in Azure DevOps, but this is what we want to sell you in terms of, what is the benefits for your business. And we can do this on any platform, because underneath all this, here's the tools we're using, right? Like when you start using tools like Packer to do the build, or you start, using, PowerShell application deployment toolkit to package things, or Chocolatey or Winget or whatever, you're using these tools like Jenkins or Azure DevOps to string together pieces of a process and building that workflow. In the end, what's in that workflow is more important than the tool that's used to run that workflow, if that makes sense, right? Because you could take what's in there, and if you do it right, you can make it portable and sell a similar process or workflow to your customer. but you're really selling them the end result or the outcome.
And to your point of kind of like almost productizing it,
Yep.
Something that you have on your own shelf. From the consulting side, and we all love it, make sure you document the hell out of it. And if it's a deliverable doc, people like pictures. Found out the hard way, in the last couple of years that going through the pain of actually documenting things to the letter makes all the difference.
Just to change subject, what's everybody using for image optimization side of it?
I was just gonna go there.
VDOT.
What was that?
VDOT.
VDOT?
The virtual desktop optimization tool. Still works.
I'm trying to find my own flavor.
Of course.
Yeah.
What was that?
Omnissa tool, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Citrix has that.
Citrix.
Citrix Optimizer, and then a collection of community scripts after that.
Yeah,
Well,
fill
yes.
in the holes in the
Yeah.
And there's things that I like to do outside of those tools, like S-delete, like for a master image, engine update. So things that kind of the BizF, if you guys have ever used BizF, that script. So similar to that was primarily for like PBS images, but kind of tweaked for MCS. So there's things I like to do outside of that tool, or the normal manufacturer tools for optimization.
Unfortunately, I don't think any of them actually get everything that you need to do, and it's all dependent on your install anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think part of the challenge too is Microsoft keeps moving that target. It would be really nice if like every 12 months there wasn't a feature update to Windows that added new crap that we have to debloat. So.
Like Windows 24 H2, when you go and log on to that golden image for the first time, it starts BitLocker encrypting in the back end, which
Bingo.
breaks.
Yes! Yes! And then you go turn it off real quick and you delete the TPM key and then you can't log in your machine anymore. Done that a few times. Yes. Yeah. As discussing that one is making sure you're turning off, unencrypting the disk, deleting the TPM chip. Auto updates. Gotta disable those. And they're buried in registry keys and scheduled tasks everywhere.
Yeah, the auto heal of Windows Update is infuriating.
Well, it's so many products. It would be great if everybody just used the same pipeline for auto updates. Like, hey, we're going to put it all in scheduled task and run it at a scheduled time. But no, we got to bury it in reg key over here, a config file over here, scheduled task, where some weird process that's not even called updates. And you're like, why is this kicking off on every machine at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? So.
And also come over the top too, because to Rob and Chris's comments about leaving them behind an image that all they have to do is click here and do this, follow this process. Sometimes they'll forget to turn off the automatic update service. Put a GPO in that runs when the machine comes online. This way, if it's something simple that they forgot, there's like a fail-safe that kind of stops something like that.
Okay, here's a question for auto updates. Browsers, right? Best practice, delete the scheduled tasks, Chrome, Edge, those auto updates. However, I'm increasingly seeing people leave them on for 0 day, right? So you get that Chrome update. Yes, you got 5,000 PDI, and yes, they got that 0 day update of Chrome instantly as soon as Google released it, as opposed to you having to repackage and push out. Is anybody else seeing that? Is that interesting? I mean, you can see the consumption. Control flags it every time, but I
still
can
struggle.
see the security benefit.
Yeah, there is benefits for that one, but it's also to the same point is maybe not turning that on, but fixing your update process.
So
you have to make it shorter. Like I used to work at large org. Our normal updates were once a month. I figured out how to automate the entire process. It just did its thing every and it was a scheduled task that ran. And then when they found out I could do that, they're like, hey, can we change it from once every 30 days to once a week? I'm like, yeah, technically we could do it every day. So following those protocols of, shorten that time frame so that you're lagged, because it's not only that. If you're running antivirus, your 0 days aren't updating. You have 15 minutes while that machine is online before antivirus updates actually update. So you're vulnerable 100%. And what's the first place that somebody goes? They open their email, launch browser.
So I think there's a couple of things, right? This becomes kind of a defense in depth question in some ways too, right? Like what's happening at the edge, are your Palo Altos or checkpoints or whatever, doing all the next gen firewall stuff and, trying to mitigate those coming in, or whatever collection of edge security tools are in place, are they doing their job, right? The second piece of that, to your point about like certain apps having, updates left on for 0 day, my answer is going to be, it depends on how you build your image and how you deploy those apps. For things like browsers, like Edge is obviously built into Windows. You can't do anything different about it. But if your standard is Chrome or Firefox or whatever, there's a chance that you're not, packaging it in an app layering tool and delivering it to your desktop because everybody has it and there's no license attached to it. So it might be in your image. In those cases, because it's a critical tool, and you're not going to necessarily rebuild your image on like a Tuesday afternoon at 9 and try to push it out, because of a 0 day, it might be worth leaving on, even if 5,000 people get it all at 8 o'clock in the morning and there's a slight performance hit, right? That might be a worthwhile risk that the security team is going to say, just do it, right? The third piece of that around mitigation, and again, this depends on the browsers, but like making sure that their homepage is not the Microsoft default or the Google default where they're going out to the internet and getting hit with potentially malicious ads or malicious code, right? They're getting the corporate internal intranet page that is safe and secured and inside the firewall or inside your Office 365 tenant. Right, those are kinds of the third layer of defense. Now the challenge is people go in and turn on, resume my session from where I last left it, and suddenly they have 100 tabs open and God knows where they're loading pages from. So there's always a chance that you're not going to be able to completely mitigate that risk. But like for a web browser, I would probably leave that update on, even though they would get that update every time they log in if they're getting some sort of non-persistent desktop.
My only pushback on that one is I have seen the auto updates cause so many problems with application layering for different plugins for different things. So it's always been a best practice for me, because of my personal experiences with it, of causing so many problems with app layering.
Yeah. So we're at a crossroads with Chrome in our environment, in that our security team actually want to get rid of it and just phase over to Edge. We've traditionally left updates on, but what we're starting to do now is for the images where we're trying to quietly phase Chrome out, we're making it available as a Flex app. So it's not auto-updating necessarily, and we're in control of that. So we're kind of trialing that. And as an additional layer to that, making it a click-to layer as well. So it just gives us that little bit more choice. So the pushback from users hasn't been horrific yet, but it's a very small number of users that have had Chrome removed for them. We do a lot of private sector and public sector work, and the DOTs and their tools only really run in Chrome for us.
Okay.
So we're at a crossroads there, so it's a great time to bring up that topic. I'm kind of curious if anybody is also phasing out Chrome, also because of the additional risks with the plugins, and narrowing down to a single browser, and why?
So the question I would ask back is, right, is you're saying, phasing out Chrome, but it's really more of phasing out Google Chrome for Microsoft Chrome, which has a lot of the same plugins and a lot of the same things.
I completely agree. I would prefer to keep Chrome personally, but...
and you're just sending all your data to Microsoft instead of Google.
Are you think they both get it?
Yeah, they probably both get it, because you're still probably you're probably then changing your default search provider back to Google.
Back to Google.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the constant, yeah, there we go. You all said it, I'm not gonna. 0 days, the constant patching, and that is, my customers' environments are largely static, like not a whole lot's changed, there's some other apps, but Chrome and Edge, man, especially, and not everybody's on with 11, right? So Edge is still separately packaged in Server 2019 and 2016, right? So these, I mean, it's constant. So I am seeing people just leave auto update on, and yeah, you take the hit every morning when you auto scale comes on or what have you, hour control. Yep, you see it, but it's worth it because it's constant. You're just gonna drive yourself batty repackaging it every time.
We leave Chrome auto update.
Sorry?
We leave Chrome auto update.
You do, yeah.
It's not worth it.
Yeah,
It's not worth it.
Yeah, I use Unite, and I've got like 170 apps in there that just self-update. So the machine boots up, first time it wakes up, it's not doing anything, and then 15 minutes to check in, it's got everything, and we're on to the next one. So.
Yeah, in the Citrix world, there's I'm trying to remember to say dwell time. Does that sound right to everybody? You can set it to PowerShell, but you can actually tell the VDI you come up and you're not available for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, however long you want to do it, and that allows all of those. That allows those processes to go. I mean, you're still taking the compute hit, but your users aren't feeling it on the individual machines. Obviously, in aggregate, they are.
It'll override if there's somewhere else for a user to go.
No, that's good. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah. So.
And if you know your usage pattern, depending on your environment, you can schedule that to happen at like 5 a.m. to scale out the pool, let it do that dwell, and then you're only looking at like 1 and 2 as it scales out new ones as users sign in.
Yep. So it is doable. It's annoying.
What else do we want to jump into?
What are people using for antivirus?
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's right.
Thanks, Dave.
No, it's a valid question. I've seen a lot of customers running CloudStrike, but it varies across the board.
CrowdStrike, Tanium,
Sentinel.
Does Tanium even count as antivirus?
No, that is a virus itself.
So, I mean, is anybody using some form of Windows Defender in your customers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Defender is bigger and bigger and bigger, man.
And are they just using kind of the default out of the box one, or are they paying for like the extra features that Microsoft sells through
MDT stuff.
Yeah, but both. The cheap ones aren't. But I mean, you can now with Sentinel and the I mean, it's getting pretty decent.
Yeah.
And you don't need a security team necessarily to deploy it and run it. I think that's one of the big benefits. It's a GPO and some settings.
I've seen a lot of clients that have gotten, for whatever reason, E5 licenses instead of E3. They'll go Defender Blend 2 and just have that be their solution if they don't want to have something else on top of that as well. It just, again, it's always considering like what they're actually using and what the best value for the business is, because a lot of these decisions are being made at a higher level, and it's like folks are just like, okay, well, this is what we have, this is what we can do with that, and then it's just a matter of making sure it deploys on everything and updates on what you want to. Yeah.
So then, are you guys finding challenges with optimizing Defender and CrowdStrike, since those are kind of the two biggest ones for the VDI images?
Yeah. So I was going to ask, for exclusions, right? Who's doing what for exclusions? Because obviously, as an EUC guy, as a constant battle with the security team, I want to put exclusions on everything for my Citrix or Horizon, and of course FS Logics, and of course some Windows exclusions, and of course the security team wants to minimize the number of exclusions. So then, I battle it out, and usually I try to at least leave the FS Logics exclusions in, because as we know, FS Logics is known sometimes to corrupt if certain antiviruses, if the exclusions are not in. Okay, so cool. And also, usually the security team says, oh, you know, the modern antivirus is CrowdStrike, we don't need exclusions, right? And some say, we cannot even do exclusions, to which I say, let me see the interface, I'll show you where I put the exclusions in, because you can't put them in, okay? But don't bullshit me. So what are you guys doing for exclusions? Which, are you doing it for just the Citrix VMware, or are you doing it for FS Logics and other things? And are you doing it for regular Windows things?
Yes.
Wherever
Yes,
it fits.
yes, and yes.
Wherever it fits. Bunch of stuff.
So customer has FS Logic, absolutely, we're gonna exclude the HDX files. And it's one of those, it depends on what they're running. Each of the manufacturers have recommended exclusion lists.
A lot of times it ends up being a conversation with the security folks. They're saying, oh, we don't want any exclusions. For FS Logic specifically, once they understand that once the user profile is loaded, it'll still scan all the files as they're used by the user. The initial hit is to take it off, so it's not trying to scan a 5 gig VHTX file that the user's trying to load into there, because it'll just time out anyway. It's not going to get through a 5 gig scan on something. It'll hit a timeout limit more than not, and the user's just waiting there for something, and then you're seeing that. So you have to be able to talk to the security team and explain why the exclusion is, but it doesn't actually prevent anything inside there from being scanned. Usually once you have those conversations, then you make a little headway on
What about the so-called thing, modern antiviruses don't need exclusions, which is what the security always says. Like CrowdStrike, don't need exclusions.
So for Defender specifically, if you want to, there's a way to set it up for Defender, because a lot of folks already have Defender that's already present in most Windows environments. If you want to see what Defender is doing, you can set it up so that with a PowerShell script that you can set up, say, for the next 10 minutes, capture what this is doing. You can set up a side-by-side test and say, okay, here's all the stuff that it's scanning, even though you say, it doesn't need exclusions, it's modern, whatever. It might be something similar for CrowdStrike in there. I've just done it with Defender specifically to show them, hey, it's hitting all these things, it's taking this much time before this file is, released for use to the user, and that's having an impact on their workday.
Yeah, I usually don't have a problem with Defender because everybody knows that Microsoft scans anyway, so usually I can put them in, and security team is like, okay, for Defender, fine. But for CrowdStrike, I usually have a problem. Like, oh no, don't put exclusions for CrowdStrike. We don't need them.
So as a CrowdStrike Complete customer, we're not even, there is IOC and IOE exclusions in the console, but as a CrowdStrike Complete customer, we're at risk of breach if we put in exclusions without contacting Complete. What I've had to do is I've had to log to help. I've had to perf on. I've had to prove that I need these IOC exclusions put in, and then I open a complete ticket and I let them put the IOC exclusions in, so that we're not in breach of the CrowdStrike insurance.
So, wow,
that's interesting.
That's fun.
2 questions to follow up on that. So, one that is insane. That is absolutely insane, but I get it.
Yeah.
But to follow up on some of those points, do you find it easier to have the security team conversations when you can hand them the Citrix or the FS Logics or the Omnissa documentation and say this is what they recommend, or hand them the antivirus vendor documentations? Because I think CrowdStrike has like a Horizon guide and a Citrix guide. If you hand them the documentation, say here's what the antivirus vendor recommends.
Well, yeah, you're not making it up, right?
Yeah.
It's a little bit easier. It's not easy because sometimes you hand the document over and the guy says, well, I don't care about this document. I'm doing what I'm doing, And
Yeah, so Complete will say the same thing. If I give a vendor KB, they'll say, oh yeah, we need you to prove it in your environment.
That's bad.
Complete is it's basically the CrowdStrike managed service, but then it includes, it's their CrowdStrike's managed service with their managed SOC and everything. And then it has their insurance on top of it, on top of our own cybersecurity insurance.
But in their defense, how many times has somebody handed me a CPU and a memory requirement from a vendor and I laughed at them?
Yeah.
Yes.
But for some things, like if you're handing them like Citrix documentation, right? They've probably partnered with Citrix to do that.
You nailed it right there. So an ISV then has to have a partnership with them, which that's more than small shop that has or on KB and it says something.
Yeah, there's a difference in scale between small scale software making line of business app versus a Citrix, Omnissa, Microsoft, Autodesk, Adobe.
Another question on the AV front, how many people have switched back to InGuest instead of at host?
I switched. I used Deep Security and I used to deploy that appliance thing on each host and it just got weird. vCenter updates and it broke, and even trend support was like, go back to InGuest. They go, ESX is the only people we do this appliance for, and they go, this is all the calls we get. So
yeah, I would say I've seen almost every customer that we've had move back. Because the depth's not there in order to run the full trend thing. You still have to run agent on a machine. So.
It sounded great with your.
Oh no, it was great at the time. It was great at the time. It was amazing at the time.
But then it's great when they turn encryption on and it's that.
Yeah. Well, you turn encryption on and it went downhill real quick.
Plus now I think with the way Broadcom is going with everything and pushing all the security stuff into NSX and into VCF, I feel like you kind of have to move back if you're not buying VCF.
Right. Well, I think the other part is now you got to be hypervisor, your second conversation and having a VMware only on-prem.
And even in the cloud side of it, how do you deal with that? That runs into another challenge.
Right. It's been I think it's been at least a year, if not a couple of years, since the last time I talked to a vendor about host space, and even the vendor's like, oh yeah, we'll sell it to you, but here's all the things that aren't going to work, and it's like, yeah, my security department's never going to go for that.
And modern antiviruses like CrowdStrike does not have a host-based functionality, right? And a lot of people are using the newer antiviruses, and they don't have it. So
well, and also the same point, it's as we're starting a trend, is you want to use the same stuff and same tools across all the platforms instead of having something unique for different use cases. And it's kind of been a common thing. I started consolidating things, like consolidating agents. Lord knows how many people have 5 or more security agents on their VDI desktops.
Or more.
It's consolidating those down as much as everybody loves dealing with them, but that's the ultimate goal, is trying to narrow down work, as we all have seen it in every organization, is consolidating down tools as much as possible and doing some rationalization in the modern work world.
So we're just deploying secure browser now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, how's everybody dealing with the fun new teams? Loaded question. I'm sorry, I'm getting stuff thrown at me.
So I automated the new Teams install at one of my customers, and it's a beautiful thing. It's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
It's the only way to do it, because we tried doing it manually for a couple months, and like the Teams add-in, right? The meeting add-in for Outlook, you cannot do that manually. I mean, you can, but you have to automate it. That's the only way to do it. Once you do that, it's totally fine. Like it works really well, but you have to go figure out, because Microsoft changes the paths every month.
Yeah,
right? We all know that. That's fun. They change the paths. They change the package name every month. But if you can automate that piece, it works generally. Okay.
Yeah.
Manny Winkle's never read. His team's V2 deployment is.
Oh, never read?
Yeah.
Does he do it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's another tool at the end of the automation stack, which we're talking about. Oh yeah, am I gonna really add another tool just for one point solution in Teams V2?
Yeah,
it's worth it.
What is it called?
So Manuel Winkle, he's a community member.
Okay.
Never read.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're, as you're pointing out, the automating of that one is a big thing. Turning off the auto updates again.
Yeah.
And then understanding that it is a reinstall for update. not an update, which is sometimes hard to explain to customers of working through that one.
And if you don't uninstall and delete, it leaves artifacts.
Yes.
They're everywhere. Like, and you know, I went into an image the other day, and there's 11 installs of the team of the Outlook plugin just sitting there. Like, you know, the latest one is the active one, but all the old ones are just there, stacking up, taking more space.
The registry keys, the file paths are all still there.
It's all there. Good job, Microsoft.
Wow. They're efficient.
Yes.
Nobody will ever need more than 640 KB of RAM.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
So, kind of following that theme, what's everybody's standard desktop configuration? It's like CPU and memory, just disk space, as a curiosity. Did you work through it on typical? Yeah.
416, 500. And I just then provision everything.
Yeah.
500.
500, that's amazing.
That's great.
I thought I was just doing a standard 100 was too big, but 500.
Still, 100's not enough anymore.
I know.
Yeah, like 150 is pushing it even.
Well, that's because all the cat pictures.
Right, right. I mean, the Windows side-by-side folders getting up to like 30 gigs.
Yes. Well, and especially in Windows 11 where you can run side-by-side desktops. And yeah.
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 Yeah, Windows isn't like anywhere in that space.
No.
Anyone else? So, like, typically what I've been running into is like 4 and 8, 4 and 12, 100 gig, 150, depending on use cases, but a lot of them are just small end user desktops.
Well, for multi-session.
Multi-session, it just depends.
It literally depends.
Yeah.
Like, what's your average number that you try to target? Like, 20 years ago, I wanted 100 people in a box. Now we don't want to do that, right? We want to do 10, 15, 20, whatever
10,
people's.
Yeah, 8, 10.
Yeah. No more than 20, but.
Well, you want to limit your blast radius when something fails.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you've got 20 people in a box, when that box has an issue, you're putting 20 people up versus half of that or fewer. So more VMs that are smaller skewed, just at scale instead of trying to pack everybody onto bigger ones just to be more modular in that way.
Yeah.
I'm up to about 3.5 gigs per user. Just touching 4 gigs per user in most of my workloads.
That's with Office?
With Office. Not heavy users, obviously, nothing serious, but for knowledge workers, up to 4 gigs of RAM per user now.
Wow.
It used to be you get away with 1 gig of RAM per user, 1.2, 2.
I don't know if I could do that just from my browser tabs.
No, I can't. No, I can't even just on.
Not even running the Windows operating system.
Yeah.
What else do we want to discuss? I'm up here for.
Still got like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Who's using what for performance analysis and monitoring?
Control up.
Control up, yeah.
EG.
Control up, login DSI, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Has kind of been my go-to.
Right. My complaint has always been that tools like I love Control Up, but it's missing the good forensic analysis and backwards historical analysis, right? Whereas, like, if I use Liquidware, it has great historical analysis, forensic analysis, but the real-time suffers, right? And there are other product called command control that's horrible. So I end up, what I end up doing is, and I would like to have one tool, right?
Yeah.
So as a consultant, I end up saying, to the customer, trying to qualify the customer. Are they kind of, how much expertise do they have? Do they just need it for the help desk and for kind of quick analysis? Then I'll go with Control Up, right? And then if I see that expertise is higher and they really want to dive deep into performance and analysis and forensic analysis, then I say, all right, well, try Liquidware. And sometimes I ended up recommending both, actually, depending on the environment. But yeah, that's the That's the thing is a lot of these tools, they don't seem to, for many years I've been telling Liquidware, beef up your real-time analysis and control up, beef up your forensic and historical analysis, and none of them have done it still, you know. So what do people think about, especially forensic and historical analysis, right? You know, what happened a week ago, right? You know, I need to see what the user said. And usually control up says, oh, you know, if you want to analyze the user, just call the user up, and as the user is doing things, watch control up, right? But that's difficult because, you know, you can't always catch the user, right? You need a historical snapshot.
I use control up, and I could go back a year.
Yeah, no, I know.
And I could go back.
But
to,
it's truncated.
It is to a certain degree, but you could actually narrow it down pretty decent. But you get the performance on each app, and it shows what memory, what CPU.
That's true. Yeah. No, you can, but it's nowhere near as good as say Liquidware for historical.
So, I mean, and the challenge with this, first off, is, right, the amount of data you're thinking of, Yuri, right? Like, if I need that level of, like, forensic and historical analysis, I need terabytes of, possibly, like, petabyte, depending on the size of the environment, worth of storage to store all that. So, over time, that's going to get rolled up and truncated and averaged out. But, how much of that do customers really need beyond maybe a week or two, right?
Yeah, I usually say a month. A month is good. You don't really need more than a month, very rarely. But a month, but not 2 weeks though. I have situations often where people are like, well, I had an issue. Okay, so when did you report the issue? Well, I was waiting for a couple of days until I reported it to help desk. Okay, and then, by the time the help desk turns around, another week. By the time he gets to the EUC guy, we have a month, and now you need to analyze what happened a month ago.
Yeah,
but in those cases, I have to wonder, right? Like, if they're waiting, like, how critical of an issue is it at that point?
Yeah.
Like, is it something that, it needs to get to, like, oh, this happened 3 days ago and I waited to report it, but it hasn't happened since? In my mind, that's almost like does this really need to be investigated?
Well, so for individual issue, but say that various users have this performance issue, right? So, but a lot of users, sometimes some users will tolerate it, right? And they're just let it go. But then overall, there's a performance issue, and many users are reporting it, right? So it's not like just a one-time thing. I need to find that pattern. In the data, and that's why I need to go back and over a month at least find the pattern, find those users, zero in on that particular time slice, right?
Yeah.
And and that's where like control up, unfortunately, is not good enough.
Yeah, Lakeside Systrack.
Yeah, I tried that too.
That is the ultimate forensic tool. You can see everything down to the second or millisecond that's happening on each machine.
I guess
there is no doubt.
I used it.
Yeah, okay. So there's black box. Black box is no doubt, but the architecture, here's what we found, because we used to deploy Lakeside Systrack. One, Lakeside got gradient, went to the top 2,000, just like everybody else, so nobody can afford it anymore. That required an on-VM database. Each VM had a local jet database, so it could record all data in real time, and then there were nightly uploads to master servers, which then embedded all that into SQL. Right, massive amounts of data we're talking, massive, which somebody mentioned earlier. I mean, multiple terabyte databases. And the customers ended up not liking it because of the actual load of running the tool. Right, now we're taking not the 1% control it talks about, but 3, 5, sometimes 10% of the system resources just to record that forensic analysis.
Yeah, and I see those executables show up for the tools too. When you're analyzing performance, then you see them show up in the top, and you're like, okay, I'm going to discard that for now, but yes, they do show up sometimes at the top.
Because when the system's busy and the tool's recording, the more that's happening, the more the tool's recording. The more the tool's recording, the more CPU it takes. And all of a sudden, we got into a situation where Lakeside was the top CPU consumer at some of our customers. So, right, it had to go. But that was the only tool I've ever seen that, I mean, forensical. You knew exactly what was happening on that box. You could tell if it was kernel CPU, regular CPU. I mean, you know, which CPU 0, 1, 2, 3, what core. Beautiful.
Well, I think you gotta look at it because
You need $1 million.
because years ago when I tried it, it was not up to par, but you know.
Still, personally, I like the control up side of it because you are able to see the end-to-end, truly end-to-end, because if you load it on the client, also, you see from the client clear to the server infrastructure and back, whether it's a Teams call, Zoom call, you can see all of the metrics out of it, which has been great. And to your point with, hey, user calls in, just kind of catch the next one instead of, you know, working through that one. If it's a common enough problem that you need to investigate into it, you can have them on escalated support and figure out where it's at. But yes, historical data is there. It is truncated to some extent.
And to that point, some of this, you know, you may also need to not look at like at the user, but you may also have to start digging into hypervisor and storage and network and cloud, and now you're still pulling things from multiple tools, whatever, you know, the rest of the infrastructure uses for monitoring. Now to follow up on this topic, you know, Citrix bought Uber Agent, and you know, VMware has been expanding, or Omnissa has been expanding. Wow, I'm really bad with old company names today. Has been expanding, you know, Workspace ONE Intelligence to start integrating these kinds of capabilities into the stack. What are people thinking of that?
Does anybody using like Uber Agent yet?
If it wouldn't,
I tried
Splunk, then I'd use it, but it needs Splunk.
Well, that's Splunk a little bit.
So,
Yeah.
I haven't done it yet, but you can roll an ELK stack, an Elastic Kibana stack, which, you know, depending on your organization, will say, oh yeah.
Well, you're looking at the IT department. So.
Yeah. But yeah, what's it called? You can do that, and you can send it all there. You're not going to get the benefit of the pre-made dashboards. You're going to have to build it all from scratch. But yeah, you can go Uber Agent to an ELK stack. But yeah.
I last time I touched Workspace ONE Intelligence was about a year ago, where I've seen, you know, a demo, and I found it still lacking. Okay, versus Control Up or Liquidware, you know. So I don't know where it's at now, but my gut feeling is, if you look at, you know, a Gartner report came out with a famous DEX comparison, like a couple months ago, right? First time ever of comparison of DEX, right? And unfortunately, Workspace ONE Intelligence, I don't think is high in the list there, and neither is Uber Agent, right? What's high in the list is Control Up, right? And
there was one on there that was surprising.
And well, NextSync is high on the list, although I don't like it that much, but it's okay, but it's high on the list.
Riverbed was the other weird one.
Yeah, I was like, what?
Man.
Like
Affinity, I haven't heard that in a long time.
Yeah, I was surprised when I saw it on the report too.
They're making They're making a big push.
Yeah.
Where are they? Interesting.
Yeah, I had to look it up after I saw that one. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that also in that Gartner thing. So Control Up didn't surprise me because, you know, it's really good and everybody, you know, it's still hot, you know, after all these years. What surprised me is Liquidware is like all the way at the bottom, right? And I use it on a regular basis along with Control Up, right? So I don't think it should have been the leader quadrant because they lack a lot of stuff, but they should have put it a few steps up, you know, because there's some really obscure ones, like they're in there that are higher than Liquidware, and that's not fair because Liquidware has been the first two on the market. So, but yeah, look up that. It's pretty decent the way they rank all of it. Yeah, NextSync has always been super expensive. They always focused on the highest end of the market. You know, IBM used to use them, right? I think they still use them. So me as a VAR, I remember we try to sign up with NextSync, and NextSync is like, well, you know, you need so much revenue per year and this and that. I'm like, I don't have that. You know, can I just sign up? Like, no. Okay. But you know, so NextSync has always been kind of arrogant, and I think the only good thing they had was a user sentiment analysis, right? Which is now in some of these other tools already exist. Like, does Control have user sentiment analysis? Yeah.
Self-serve remediation too.
Right, right.
That's for fact clients though. That when you're dealing with non-persistent VDI, Nextink was not really a good play up until maybe recently.
Yeah. So yeah, look up that Magic Quadrant. It has a nice overview if you're trying to see what you want to use and recommend to customers.
Okay, we're supposed to trust Gartner.
I trust him. I mean, not always, but they're pretty good. Chris Wolf came from Gartner. Okay, anybody knows Chris?
So with what Citrix showed yesterday or the day before, right? UberAge is going to bubble into director for short time, whatever. I guess the question is, but you're saying Control Up is really good at sort of real time, short term, but not a good forensics. But if they're going to give you 2 days worth of data, it's going to be interesting to see if that displaces current. Is it good enough again?
Yeah, I don't have any experience with UberAge, unfortunately.
Yeah. Right, it's not going to include, and I don't think you have to have Splunk for that part. I think it's going to bubble right into director. Like the Splunk part goes away in that implementation. You just don't get the historical or the dashboards or whatever. And if that is an accurate statement, you get more value out of the session performance tabs now on the monitor.
And in all honesty, I wouldn't be surprised if, now that Citrix owns UberAge, if they start building out like an appliance based on the ELK stack, because that's free, and they can have customers get that easily, and that'll expand their footprint in the customer.
Well, it makes it a little bit more
Yeah.
sticky.
Yeah.
That's the
That's
word they're after.
Oh, right, yeah, they don't want you to be able to rethink that negotiation or renewal.
Where's Sean? We should tell him that.
One other thing is I attended Benny's session, right, on performance analysis, and I've attended his sessions before. I knew what he was doing, but I mean now the latest thing he's doing, honestly, none of the tools on the market are doing what he's doing, right?
It's true. No.
Yeah, that's true. I think not, because he's doing actual video recordings of users' machines, right? And nobody's doing that, right? And that's the ultimate performance analysis, right? So, while I was watching his session, I'm like, how do we automate Benny? Okay.
Make them open source.
I know, right?
Well, keep in mind though, because Benny has worked on a couple of tools, and he's added some of those capabilities. I think there's one, was it RDP Analyzer or something like that?
Yeah, there's RDP Analyzer. There's actually a plugin for Control Up to do something similar.
Yeah, but keep in mind, with what Benny is doing with recording screens and kind of doing like the image quality comparisons would not fly in a lot of companies or in some countries.
That's true.
So like what?
Bad enough, right?
Yeah.
Like in Germany, they would never be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like in an actual customer environment, because there's a lot of privacy regulations that would go into play there.
Well, Microsoft's about to opt everybody into that with recall on Windows.
That's bad.
Yeah. All right. We got 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we could call it.
Yeah. Give her a call and everybody take a minor bathroom break and go jump on the next one.